I'm sitting at my kitchen table staring at text messages on my phone from 3 months ago. Messages I have absolutely no memory of sending. Consider it a gift, not a loan. Family helps family. No payback needed. I'm blessed to be able to help you. These words are in my sent folder, timestamped from July 6th at 11:47 p.m. But I didn't write them. I couldn't have written them because I don't remember writing them. I don't remember anything from that night after about 10 o'clock. 3 months ago was our big family reunion at my lake house. Over 30 relatives, a whole weekend of celebration. My brother Jason pulled me aside Saturday night, said his business was failing, needed $75,000 to make payroll or he'd lose everything. I believed him. I transferred the money from my retirement account that same night. He promised to pay me back in 90 days. September 15th. Yesterday was September 15th. When I asked about the repayment, Jason sent me screenshots of these texts. Said I told him it was a gift. That I don't remember because I had too much to drink that weekend, but I didn't have too much to drink. I rarely drink at all, and I don't send texts like, "I'm blessed to be able to help you." That's not how I talk. That's not how I write. Something happened to me that night. Something that made me send messages I don't remember, saying things I would never say, and my brother knows exactly what happened, because I'm starting to think he's the one who made it happen. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, leave a comment. And subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you gets so much darker than a family loan gone wrong. Let me tell you how I discovered my brother drugged me at our family reunion to steal my retirement money, and why half my family still thinks I'm lying about it. I'm 56 years old, married to Tom for 28 years, mother of 3 adult children. I work as a hospital administrator. Tom's a civil engineer. We've built a good life. Paid off our house 10 years ago, saved responsibly, have about $340,000 in retirement accounts. My younger brother Jason is 52. He owns a small HVAC business, married to Cheryl who works as a nurse. They have 2 teenagers and always seem to be struggling a bit financially, but nothing catastrophic. Jason and I were close as kids, drifted apart somewhat as adults, but we were still family. Still loved each other. Or so I thought. Our parents died 10 years ago in a car accident. After their funeral, the extended family slowly lost touch. We'd see each other at weddings or the occasional holiday, but that closeness we'd had growing up had faded. Last spring, I decided to change that. I offered our lake house for a big family reunion over July 4th weekend. Hadn't been all together since Mom and Dad's funeral. I wanted to honor their memory by bringing everyone back together that I spent weeks preparing. Cleaned the lake house top to bottom, planned meals for 30+ people, organized activities, made sure everyone had a place to sleep. I was excited. This felt important, like I was preserving something our parents had built. The weekend started perfectly. Friday afternoon, relatives started arriving from all over. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, Jason's family, my kids, everyone. The house filled with noise and laughter, and the kind of chaos that feels good when it's family. Jason and Cheryl seemed normal that first day. Friendly, helpful, participating in everything. Cheryl was especially helpful in the kitchen, insisting on making drinks for people, managing the meal prep. I was grateful for the help. Saturday was lake activities, swimming, kayaking, a big barbecue lunch. By evening, everyone was sunburned and happy. We had a massive dinner on the deck, the kind of meal that takes hours because people keep talking and laughing between courses. I had 1 glass of wine with dinner. I'm not a big drinker, especially when I'm hosting and trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. But earlier, before dinner, Cheryl had made me one of her famous margaritas. She'd been so insistent, so proud of this special recipe, that I drunk it to be polite even though I really preferred wine. After dinner, most people moved to the bonfire down by the water. Kids were roasting marshmallows, adults were drinking beer and telling stories. It was exactly what I'd hoped the reunion would be. Around 8:30, Jason pulled me aside, asked if we could talk privately. We walked down to the dock, away from the noise and the crowd. He seemed stressed, emotional in a way I'd rarely seen him. He told me his business was in serious trouble. He'd lost a major contract, couldn't make payroll on Tuesday, his whole crew would quit if he didn't pay them. The business would collapse. His family would lose everything. He needed $75,000 just for 90 days. Once a new job paid out, he'd have the cash flow to pay me back in full. I hesitated. That was a significant amount of money from my retirement account. But Jason was nearly crying. He reminded me that he'd helped me 20 years ago with a down payment when Tom and I were buying our first house. Said I was his only sister, his only hope. That I thought about our parents, about what they would want, about family helping family. That I told him yes. Jason hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. He was crying, thanking me over and over, swearing he'd pay me back September 15th. Exactly 90 days. We went back up to the house. I got my laptop, logged into my retirement account while Jason stood beside me giving me his business bank account details. The transfer process took several steps: security questions, confirmation codes, verification. I remember doing all of it, watching the confirmation screen that said the $75,000 transfer would process Monday morning. Jason hugged me again, told me I was saving his family. Then we went back outside to join the party. That's where my memory gets fuzzy. Did I remember being at the bonfire? I remember people talking, laughing. I remember feeling very relaxed, maybe too relaxed. I remember Tom helping me to bed at some point, saying I seemed exhausted. I woke up Sunday morning in our bedroom feeling groggy, but otherwise fine. The reunion wrapped up that day, everyone packing, saying goodbye, promising to do this again soon. Jason and his family left mid-morning. He seemed upbeat, relieved, grateful. I went back to work Monday feeling good about the weekend, about helping my brother, about bringing the family together. The next 3 months passed normally. Jason and I texted occasionally about regular family stuff. He never mentioned the loan, but I figured that was fine. September 15th was the repayment date. I trusted he'd handle it. Mid-September, I sent him a text, looking forward to the 15th. Glad business is better. His response, "What do you mean?" That's when my whole world started unraveling. Jason called me within minutes of that text exchange. His voice sounded genuinely confused. He said that wasn't a loan, that I'd told him it was a gift, that I'd said he shouldn't worry about paying it back. My stomach turned. I told him that wasn't what happened. We'd agreed on 90 days. He'd said September 15th specifically. He insisted I was remembering wrong. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I'd been pretty drunk that weekend. Didn't I remember? I told him I wasn't drunk. I'd had 1 glass of wine, and that margarita Cheryl made. 2 drinks over an entire evening. He said I'd had more than that. That I didn't remember correctly. While we were still on the phone, he texted me screenshots. Messages from my own number, sent that Saturday night at 11:47 p.m. Over an hour after I'd made the bank transfer. The messages said I'd been thinking about our conversation. That I wanted him to consider the money a gift, not a loan. That family helps family. That I was blessed to be able to help and he shouldn't worry about September. I stared at those words on my screen. I had no memory of writing them. None. That I told Jason I didn't write those messages. He said they came from my phone, that I'd sent them. His voice had an edge now, like he was getting impatient with me. After we hung up, I went through my phone immediately. Found those exact messages in my sent folder. Timestamp, everything. They were there, but I didn't remember sending them. That I tried to piece together that night in my head. Dinner on the deck. The dock conversation with Jason. Going inside to make the transfer. I remembered all of that clearly. But after the transfer, after watching that confirmation screen, everything went hazy. Disconnected. Like trying to remember a dream. I found Tom and showed him the texts. Explained that I had no memory of sending them. He asked if maybe I'd had more to drink than I thought. Said it had been a big, stressful weekend, and maybe I'd just gotten more relaxed than usual. The way he said it, I could tell he half believed Jason's version. That maybe I had been drunk, had gotten generous, and now didn't want to admit it. That's when I started really thinking about the timeline. About Cheryl making me that special margarita before dinner, being so insistent that I drink it. About how I'd felt unusually relaxed, foggy, exhausted much earlier than normal. That I went to my laptop and searched for information about memory loss and blackouts. Found articles about date rape drugs, Rohypnol, GHB, other sedatives that could be slipped into drinks without someone knowing. They caused memory gaps, made people suggestible, left them unable to remember what happened. Cheryl was a nurse. She had access to medications. She'd made my drink personally, hadn't let anyone else touch it. My hands started shaking as I read through symptoms that matched exactly what I'd experienced. I called Jason back. Asked him directly if Cheryl had put something in my drink. He exploded. Said I was accusing his wife of drugging me, that I was making up insane conspiracy theories because I regretted being generous. He said if I kept harassing him, he'd get a lawyer. Then he hung up and I sat there holding my phone, realizing my brother had just threatened me with legal action for asking to be repaid money he'd begged me for. I called my Aunt Linda, my dad's sister who'd been at the reunion. Asked if she'd noticed anything strange about my behavior that night. She was uncomfortable. Said I'd seemed very relaxed, very talkative. That I'd been generous with everyone, talking about how blessed I was and how important family was. That I asked if she remembered me specifically saying anything about giving Jason money. She couldn't recall exact details, but said I'd definitely been talking about helping family. She thought it was sweet, that I was just in a generous mood. I realized everyone had seen my altered behavior. They just interpreted it as me being tipsy and sentimental, not as me being drugged. Perfect cover for what Jason and Cheryl had done. I called Cheryl directly. Asked her what she'd put in that margarita. She sounded confused, almost convincing. Said it was just a normal margarita, tequila, lime, triple section. Asked if I was okay. When I asked if Jason had told her to drug me, her voice went ice cold. She said she wasn't having this conversation, that I needed help. Then she hung up too. Later that day, my cousin sent me screenshots from a family group chat I wasn't part of. Jason had been telling everyone that I was harassing him, claiming he owed me money when I'd actually given it to him as a gift. He'd shared the text screenshots with the whole family that I read through the responses. Relatives saying how rough that must be for Jason. Someone asking if I was having memory issues. Another person saying I'd seemed off. That weekend, my own family was discussing whether I was lying or having cognitive problems. And they were believing Jason's version because he had those texts from my phone as proof that I met with a lawyer the next day. Explained everything. The loan conversation, the transfer, the texts I didn't remember sending, my suspicion that I'd been drugged. She asked if I had evidence it was a loan rather than a gift. I didn't. It had been a verbal agreement, just the two of us on that dock. She asked if I could prove I'd been drugged. That was 3 months ago. Nothing would show up in my system now. She asked if there were witnesses to our conversation. No. We'd been alone specifically so Jason could ask privately. The lawyer looked at me with something like pity. She said this was going to be very difficult to prove. That the text from my own phone saying it was a gift would be nearly impossible to overcome. I pulled up my bank records that night. The transfer had processed at 10:23 p.m. Saturday. The texts were sent at 11:47 p.m. An hour and 24 minutes between them. If Jason's version was true, why would I transfer money first and then text about it being a gift over an hour later? If my version was true, I'd made the transfer while still coherent enough to complete all the security steps. Then they drugged me more heavily, or the drugs fully kicked in. Someone had used my phone while I was impaired to send those texts, creating evidence that I'd consented to a gift. By morning, whatever they'd given me had metabolized enough that I just seemed tired. Slightly hungover. Nothing alarming. It was brilliant, really. They had my money, and they had my supposed consent. Documented in texts I couldn't remember sending. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my bank records and those text messages, understanding exactly what had been done to me, and knowing that proving it would be almost impossible. I spent 2 days researching toxicologists before I found one willing to consult with me. Dr. Sarah Chen had testified in criminal cases involving drugging and assault. I explained the timeline over the phone, the cocktail around 7, fuzzy memory after the bank transfer at 10:20, text sent from my phone at 11:47 that I didn't remember, waking up normal Sunday morning. She said it was a classic profile for GHB or a similar short-acting sedative. These drugs caused memory loss for a specific time window, then metabolized quickly and left the system within 24 to 72 hours. I asked if we could test for it now. 3 months later, her answer was what I'd expected but still hurt to hear. No. The drugs were long gone from my system. But she said the memory gap and my description of symptoms were entirely consistent with being drugged. I asked if that would hold up in court. She said it would support my claim, but without a blood test from that night, it wasn't definitive proof that I hired a private investigator next. Asked him to look into Cheryl's background, specifically her employment history. What he found made my suspicions feel more real. Cheryl had worked at a pain management clinic for 8 years before her current hospital job. That clinic had been investigated for missing controlled substances. Several nurses had left around the same time, including Cheryl. No formal charges were ever filed, but the investigator said the pattern was suspicious. People don't leave good jobs abruptly without reason. He couldn't prove Cheryl had stolen medications, but she'd clearly had access and knowledge of exactly the kind of drugs that could have been used on me. Then the investigator looked into Jason and Cheryl's finances. 2 months after the reunion, they'd bought a boat. $62,000. New deck on their house, $18,000. Jason's business had paid him bonuses totaling $15,000. The struggling business that needed $75,000 to make payroll had somehow recovered enough to fund luxuries within weeks. I stared at the photos from their social media. Jason and Cheryl on their new boat, smiling, celebrating. My retirement money floating on the lake while they pretended to be victims of my generosity. A week later, Aunt Linda called and asked me to come to a family meeting. I thought maybe she wanted to help, wanted to hear my side. Instead, I walked into an intervention. For me, Jason and Cheryl were there. Aunt Linda, 2 other relatives. They'd gathered to express concern about my behavior, about the accusations I was making. Jason said he loved me, but I was tearing the family apart over this. Cheryl cried, said she would never hurt me, that I was like a sister to her. My uncle suggested I was under stress, maybe needed to see a doctor. Jason said maybe it was early dementia, that I should get checked out. I tried to explain the timeline, the memory gap, what the toxicologist had said. But I could see it in their faces. They thought I was being paranoid, irrational, that I was making excuses because I regretted being generous. They were painting me as mentally unstable. And it was working. That I left that meeting understanding that my own family had chosen to believe I was crazy rather than accept that Jason was a criminal. That night, Tom sat with me in our living room. He said he believed something had happened to me that weekend. But then he added that he didn't think we could prove it and that fighting this was tearing our family apart. That I asked if he wanted me to just let them get away with it. He said he wanted us to move on, that we'd rebuild the retirement money, that we had time. That I told him it wasn't about the money anymore, that they'd drugged me, violated me. Tom was quiet for a long time before he said that if I couldn't prove it, all this was doing was hurting me, and my own husband wanted me to drop it. To let my brother and his wife get away with drugging and robbing me because it was easier than fighting. That I went back to the lawyer with everything I'd gathered. The boat purchase timeline. Cheryl's suspicious employment history. The toxicologist's opinion. The lawyer said it helped, but it was all circumstantial. The texts from my phone were direct evidence, and everything else was just supporting a theory I couldn't definitively prove. I asked about suing for the money back. She said I'd have to prove it was a loan, not a gift, and my own texts contradicted that. I asked about going to the police. She asked what I'd report, that I thought I'd been drugged 3 months ago, that my brother hadn't repaid money I'd texted him to keep, without proof, without witnesses, without a drug test. I had nothing but a story that sounded like sour grapes. I hired a forensic linguistics expert as a last desperate attempt. Had her analyze my normal texting patterns compared to those gift texts. She found inconsistencies. I never used phrases like, "I'm blessed," in my text messages. My normal texts were shorter, less formal, different phrasing entirely. The gift texts used language that sounded more like Jason than like me. She said she could testify to these inconsistencies, that they supported my claim. But she also said it wasn't definitive. People's writing styles could vary. I asked if someone's style would vary that dramatically while drunk. She said that was a good point, that impairment usually made people less formal, not more. It was something. But I didn't know if it would be enough. I found photos from the reunion posted on Facebook. One from 9:30 that night showed me holding Cheryl's margarita. Another from 10:15 showed me looking glassy-eyed, unfocused. I looked visibly impaired. I saved those photos. They showed I'd been drugged because I looked drugged, but still, it wasn't proof. Just more pieces of a puzzle that might not be enough to convince anyone that I sat with all this evidence, circumstantial, supportive, but not definitive. I could sue and maybe lose. I could spend thousands on legal fees fighting my own brother. My family would take his side. My husband wanted me to move on, but if I did nothing, Jason and Cheryl would get away with drugging and robbing me. And I'd have to pretend everything was fine at every family gathering for the rest of my life. I called the lawyer back, told her to file the lawsuit. She asked if I knew how ugly this would get. I said it was already ugly. We were just making it official now. Filing the lawsuit felt like dropping a bomb on my family. I sued Jason for return of the $75,000 loan, alleging I'd been drugged and the texts were sent without my informed consent. I included everything: the toxicologist's affidavit, the linguistics analysis, the photos showing me visibly impaired, the timeline of their boat purchase. Jason hired a lawyer and filed a counterclaim for harassment and defamation. Said my accusations about drugging had damaged his reputation and his business. The family exploded. Most sided with Jason immediately. Said I was being vindictive, that I couldn't accept I'd been generous, and now wanted the money back. The discovery process began. Jason's lawyer demanded my phone records, medical records, psychiatric evaluations. They were trying to prove I was unstable, that I had memory issues, that I'd made this whole thing up. My lawyer demanded Jason's financial records, Cheryl's employment history, their phone records from the reunion weekend. Jason fought releasing his financials. The judge ordered him to comply. What came out in discovery changed everything. Jason's business bank statements showed the company had been fine before the reunion. No cash flow crisis. No missed payroll. The emergency he described on that doc had been completely fabricated. Cheryl's employment records confirmed she'd left the pain clinic under mutual agreement, HR code for being fired, without formal charges, but the real breakthrough was their text messages from the week before the reunion. Messages between Jason and Cheryl that my lawyer had subpoenaed from their phone records. Think she'll go for it? She will if we do this right. Get the stuff from your work? The texts were vague, careful, but suggestive. My lawyer argued they showed premeditation. That Jason and Cheryl had planned this before they ever arrived at my lake house. Then came Cheryl's deposition. My lawyer asked her about the famous margarita. What exactly had been in it? Cheryl stumbled. Said she didn't remember the specific ingredients. My lawyer pressed. She'd made it special for me. Insisted I drink it, but couldn't remember what was in it. Cheryl said it was just a margarita. Normal ingredients. Nothing unusual. Then my lawyer asked if she'd had access to sedatives through her employment. Cheryl's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Cheryl was visibly rattled. Later, my investigator discovered Cheryl had been seeing a therapist. My lawyer subpoenaed the therapy notes. The therapist had documented that Cheryl expressed guilt about the thing we did to Jason's sister. That she'd shown remorse for helping husband obtain money through deception. Reading those notes felt like vindication and violation at the same time. Cheryl had admitted it to her therapist. Had confessed that they'd deceived me. But she'd never face consequences for it because therapy notes, while discoverable, weren't the same as a confession. Family members were deposed next. Aunt Linda admitted I'd seemed different that night. Overly talkative, then suddenly exhausted. Said it didn't seem like normal drunk behavior. My uncle remembered me saying strange things about being blessed to help family. Said it hadn't sounded like my normal way of talking. Multiple relatives confirmed my behavior had been unusual. The pattern was clear. I'd been impaired, acting out of character. Not myself. Before trial, both sides were required to attempt mediation. We sat in a conference room, me, Jason, our lawyers, and a neutral mediator. The mediator reviewed all the evidence and suggested Jason return $50,000 as a settlement. I said no. I wanted all $75,000 and an admission of what they'd done. Jason said he wasn't admitting anything. That I'd given him that money. The mediator pointed out that Jason's financial records showed no business emergency. That he'd bought a boat 2 weeks after receiving my money. Jason claimed that was after the business had recovered. The mediator asked how a business could recover that quickly when it had supposedly been on the verge of collapse. Jason went silent. His lawyer whispered to him, Jason offered $60,000 with no admission of wrongdoing that I refused. I told him I wanted all of it and I wanted the truth to come out. The mediation fell apart. Trial was scheduled. A week before the trial date, Jason called me directly. He asked if we could talk, just the two of us. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop, neutral territory. He looked exhausted, older, defeated in a way I'd never seen him. He said he couldn't afford a trial, that the legal fees were destroying him, that I told him to pay me back and admit what he'd done. He said he couldn't admit it because if he did, Cheryl could lose her nursing license. I said she should lose her license. She'd drugged me. Jason's eyes filled with tears. He said he knew, that he was sorry. I froze. This was the closest to an admission I was going to get. I asked him why. Why he'd done this to me. He said he was a selfish person who'd seen an opportunity. And then he said something that made everything make more sense. Cheryl hated me. Had always been jealous of my life, my money, my marriage. She'd been the one who pushed him to do this. I realized this had been partly about revenge for Cheryl, not just greed. We reached a settlement 3 days later. Jason agreed to return the full $75,000, $30,000 immediately, the rest in payments over 18 months. There was no formal admission of drugging to protect Cheryl's nursing license. But the settlement agreement included specific language. Defendant acknowledges money was intended as loan, not gift, and defendant acknowledges plaintiff did not provide informed consent to revised terms. Jason signed IT. IT wasn't the full vindication I'd wanted, but it was something. It was him admitting, in a legal document, that I'd been right. I sent copies of the settlement to family members who doubted me. Showed them Jason had acknowledged it was a loan. Showed them the financial records proving there'd been no business emergency. Aunt Linda called, crying, apologizing for not believing me. My uncle apologized too. But Jason's kids, my niece and nephew, cut me off completely. They believed I'd destroyed their father over money. They didn't understand, or wouldn't accept, what had really happened. Tom apologized for not believing me completely from the start. Said he should have trusted my judgment instead of wanting to keep the peace. I appreciated the apology, but something had been damaged between us. I knew he doubted me, had asked me to drop it, had chosen comfort over standing by me. I considered reporting Cheryl to the nursing board. But without definitive proof of drugging, it would go nowhere. My lawyer made it clear to Cheryl's lawyer, though, that if there were any future incidents, this case would resurface. Cheryl would be watched. She kept her license, kept her job, never faced official consequences, but she knew I had evidence. Knew I'd fought her, and won. Knew she couldn't touch me again, that I got my money back, eventually. But I'd lost my relationship with Jason permanently. Lost my niece and nephew. Lost some extended family who thought I'd overreacted. Holidays would never be the same. Family gatherings would always have this wound underneath them, that I'd proven I was right. Not crazy, not lying, not confused, but being right had cost me almost everything. The first Thanksgiving after the settlement, I didn't host. For the first time in 20 years, my dining room table sat empty on the holiday. Jason's family had their own celebration. I had a smaller dinner, just my immediate family and Aunt Linda. The table felt empty, but it also felt peaceful. No pretending, no tension, just people who believed me. Jason made the first few payments on schedule. Then he started missing months, making excuses. Every time my lawyer had to send a demand letter, it was another reminder of what he'd done. I'd lie awake some nights wondering if fighting for the money had been worth the ongoing stress. Then I'd remember those text messages I didn't write, the feeling of being told I was crazy, and I'd know I'd made the right choice. 6 months after the settlement, I ran into Jason and Cheryl at the grocery store. I was in one aisle, they were in the next. I heard them before I saw them. Cheryl's voice carried, "Can you believe she's still demanding the full amount?" Jason responded, "She got what she wanted. She destroyed our family." I stood frozen, listening to them paint themselves as victims. Considered confronting them, then quietly left instead. Some battles aren't worth fighting twice, and my daughter asked me once why I couldn't just forgive Uncle Jason. Said families fight over money all the time, but we're blood. I tried to explain it wasn't about money. It was about being drugged, violated, gaslight. About everyone telling me I was crazy when I knew what had happened to me. But I could see doubt in her eyes, too. She didn't say it, but I knew she wondered if maybe I'd just been drunk that night and didn't want to admit it. Even my own children had doubts. I still see Cheryl's name occasionally in our hospital system directory. We work for the same medical network, different buildings. She's still employed, still trusted with patients, still has access to medications. I wonder sometimes if she's done this to anyone else. If she will again. AT family gatherings now, I watch my drinks. Never leave them unattended. Don't accept food or beverages from relatives I don't completely trust. My kids notice, think I'm paranoid, but I know what can happen when you trust the wrong person. Even family. Especially family. 2 years after the lawsuit, Jason made his final payment. I deposited the check and had my $75,000 back, plus 2 years of legal fees I'd never recover. Plus 2 years of stress. Plus relationships that would never be repaired I'd won. But it didn't feel like winning. Tom and I ended up selling the lake house. I couldn't go back there. Couldn't look at that dock where Jason had lied to me, or that kitchen where Cheryl had made that drink, or that laptop where I'd transferred money while drunk. We needed a clean break from the place where it all happened. 2 years later, Aunt Linda confessed something that made my stomach drop. She'd seen Cheryl mixing my drink that night. Said Cheryl had been very deliberate about it. Very careful. I asked why she hadn't said anything during the lawsuit. Linda looked ashamed. Said she hadn't wanted to get involved, hadn't wanted to choose sides. She'd seen something, known something, and stayed silent. Family loyalty had protected Jason and Cheryl. Left me to fight alone that I'm 58 now. My retirement fund is restored, but my sense of family isn't. I don't regret fighting. I regret having to fight. I regret that my brother was capable of this. That half my family chose to believe I was crazy rather than accept that Jason was criminal, but I'm proud I didn't back down. Proud I showed my children that you stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. Especially when it's family who hurt you. Every holiday now, there's an empty chair at my table. Not because someone died, but because someone betrayed me. And sometimes betrayal is its own kind of death, the death of who you thought someone was. That I look at that empty chair and feel the loss. But I also feel relief that I don't have to pretend everything is fine. The empty chair is honest, and after everything, honesty is what matters most.